Speakers, publishers, consultants, coaches, and info marketers unite. The Speaking of Wealth Show is your roadmap to success and significance. Learn the latest tools, technologies, and tactics to get more bookings, sell more products, and attract more clients. If you're looking to increase your direct response sales, create a big-time personal brand, and become the go-to guru, the Speaking of Wealth Show is for you. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
It's my pleasure to welcome Kirky Galt. He is founder, CEO, and creative director of Creative Real Estate Copy and host of the Real Estate Executive Thought Leadership Podcast. Kirky, welcome. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
My pleasure. You're in Austin, Texas, and give us a little overview, maybe a bird's eye view as to what is going on in the market first, and then let's dive into, what the industry can learn from what you do. But a lot of changes. We've all heard about how commercial real estate is being affected by the pandemic and now by civil unrest. People moving out of high-density cities and such. What is your take? Because you're doing a lot of copywriting about this, so you really have a bird's-eye view.
Yes, we're working with a lot of commercial clients and doing the content for them. We do a lot of research, and we're really watching the market. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from our clients as well about where the market's going and what their experience is. And a lot of them are having challenges, but what I'm getting a sense is that there's a lot of optimism in the marketplace. Going into quarter 3 and quarter 4, we really see that there's going to be a real boost in the market, seeing that there's a lot of new originations occurring. People are getting a lot of new leads right now. People are very optimistic. So although it's been a challenging time, we're going to bounce back quickly. There's concern about what's going to happen with the vacant commercial space, but people are putting together plans to convert that to residential. We're seeing a lot of conversation about that. And we're going to find our way through it. And I think the market's going to really do well and pick up here.
We've actually been talking about conversions and alternate uses for space. And, I think that is a very interesting topic. And maybe we could dive into that for just a moment. But, it's fraught with issues of zoning and, whether it's better to just do teardowns or remodels, because this stuff is complicated of course when you get into construction and actually executing on it. So you look at something like shopping malls, right, which are in big trouble, and then you look at office space, and then of course retail. Tell us about what you're seeing in terms of the alternate uses and how that might actually play out.
Well, I think the most cost-effective and the most sustainable approaches are going to be infill rather than new development. I think that's also going to be easier to get financed in this marketplace, considering the risk. With infill developments, there's a lot less development costs. You're not having to get completely, in a lot of cases, if the zoning is already appropriate for what your planned best use is, there's a lot less challenges. It's going to be less expensive, and it's going to be more practical and feasible. So, switching from commercial to residential, there's going to be challenges, but given the current climate, I think public planning officials are going to be more cooperative with the zoning changes.
I think you're right.
Making these deals possible.
Yeah, they're going to have to be. I mean, they're going to lose their tax revenue base from one use case, and if they don't convert it to another, that's just going to be gone forever. So they'd be crazy not to cooperate. And so I think a lot of that will be streamlined. Whereas before, if you wanted to convert an office building to residential, boy, that would be a nightmare getting it through city planning, I'm sure. But, it's interesting. Like, I sort of think about, Kirky, like the typical, 2 or 3 story suburban style office complex, right? And I mean, are they going to, make it so the windows open? Are they going to put balconies? How are they going to do the bathroom? They're going to put bathrooms in each space. I mean, it's just that's a chore to redevelop like that. I almost wonder if it would be better to just bulldoze it and start over and just put up a housing development there. Thoughts on that? But, a lot of them are on main streets too. So, it really doesn't work very well necessarily.
Well, from a replacement cost perspective, that probably won't be practical to bulldoze it. And also from sustainability, there's going to be a lot of waste materials, a lot of extra construction that needs to be done. But I think they're going to find alternative uses that will work for residential. It may be replacing some windows, adjusting a few things, and then the design. But there's going to be a lot of opportunity where I think work live. A lot of people are going to be working from home, but they're also going to want to have a more professional space where they can concentrate on work, where they can work with their teams, whether it be digitally or in person, where the design live space is going to work without having to completely modify the design. And I think there's going to be a lot of small companies that are going to be looking for that. So that might be an opportunity there. Sort of
the loft style mixed use, which has been pretty popular. It hasn't been done that much, but like the office downstairs and the house upstairs kind of concept. So there's some interesting things that'll come out of this for sure. Any thoughts on shopping malls and alternate uses for those?
Well, I'm hearing a lot that storage is one of the top considerations. Also, affordable housing. So with the space empty, they're going to need to do something with it, and it's going to have to be practical. It's going to have to meet best use and what people are looking for. I don't know, storage is definitely in high demand, but residential space, especially affordable, is always in demand, and it's needed in most every market. So that's the top of the list that people are considering.
Yeah. Oh, no, we all know it's needed, and there is a huge housing shortage, but it's just so hard when I walk through a shopping mall. I was at a shopping mall here in Palm Beach last weekend, and I'm thinking about how could you convert this to condos or apartments, and I'm looking at the structure and the way it works, and I'm thinking that would just be a really difficult job, at least with what we're used to for housing in terms of how it's laid out and so forth. But yeah, who knows? We'll see. I mean, I can't wait to see some of the creative designs and concepts architects and planners come up with. It'll be fascinating to see this roll out over the years. Maybe we can switch gears now and talk to us about the marketing side of the real estate industry, especially most of your clients are commercial real estate oriented or asset management. So I assume you've got funds and so forth. Tell us about some of the projects you work on for them, and what's working, what's not working in the marketing world.
Sure. We work on a lot of thought leadership content. That's our primary focus. We also write promotional and other materials, direct response materials. We do PR writing, and we also do website design and content. And right now we're finding that these are really important, especially during a crisis period when you need those leads, when you need to recover. The marketing has to be essential. And we see that a lot of firms, they pull back on their marketing budgets during this time. But this is actually when you need to really redouble your efforts to maintain a consistent lead flow and to keep prospects and closings in the pipeline. Some of the strategies we're seeing that are working are inbound content. That's really the most impactful. Sharing your insights and knowledge, generating value for your prospects. What it does, it builds that credibility and your personal and corporate brand, and it helps guide your clients and their end users through this market. So it's extremely important right now. And we're finding the video is very effective in supporting that. It gets the message out there. It's easy to connect with, and it generates excellent engagement. Podcasting, like what we're doing here, is also very effective. It helps with building connections with leaders and influencers in your industry. And right now, this is the time to do that, because a lot of us, a lot of prospects, a lot of companies aren't doing so much activity in terms of the projects right now. So it's an excellent time to focus on your marketing. So podcasting is excellent. Yeah, it generates goodwill. It's a good opportunity to learn from other experts in your field. And from the interviews that I've been doing on my show, I learned a tremendous amount about the market and what they're doing, how they're coping with it, and how they're planning for success in the coming quarters.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've been podcasting for 16 years now, and it's great. I mean, you learn so much talking to people all day. So yeah, that's great. Absolutely. Is there any shift you see in the content marketing world, that has happened over the years? Obviously, attention spans are a lot shorter, and they keep getting shorter. Any sort of changes in the content marketing world that you've sensed?
Sure. I see that it's definitely going more towards informational content that really provides value. I think anything that's overly promotional gets dismissed as noise. People aren't really, they're not willing to listen to that or entertain that and sit through an extended amount of content about that. However, the content length, it has gotten shorter, and you have to break it up, make it easy to read. You have to make it engaging, tell a story, no matter what the topic is, providing a narrative. But even longer content, even white papers, things like that could be 1,500, 2,000 words or more. People will engage with that and read with that if you're providing them clear value and you're presenting it effectively, showing them bullet pointing it, making it clear what it is that you're trying to express, and then getting into the details. So yeah, length has gotten shorter and attention spans have changed, but valuable content overcomes that.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. It's interesting also what firms and marketers are calling documents or content pieces. Whether you call it a white paper or a free report or a an ebook. Ebook's not as common nowadays. Do you have any comments there about what you see working as those lead magnets?
Sure. I think white papers are the top of the list, and also contributor articles. Mm-hmm. Yeah, white papers, they have different names. Sometimes they'll be called an ebook, which isn't so popular anymore. I think that's more popular in the residential space.
Yeah, or many years ago in the early days of the internet, right?
Yep. Yes. But white papers and case studies, very valuable, provides a lot of information, and that will drive clicks and opt-ins to build email lists, build followings. Very effective on social media, especially when you support it with other multimedia, with video and audio to help get the message out there and make it clear what the value is.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned length before, and I just wanted to go back to that. So what is the optimum length for that document?
Okay, for a white paper, it depends on how you're going to distribute it. If it's going to be something that's going to go on your website that you're going to distribute by email, and if you're just going to cut and paste the content there into your blast or your distribution, then 500 to 1,000 words can work. And it also depends on the complexity of the topic. If you're going to offer a white paper on your website to drive clicks, or if you're going to have them go through multiple steps to get that information, then you're going to need more content. It's going to need to be more in depth. It's going to need to provide more value. And that depends on the topics too. If you're dealing with software as a service in the commercial space, for example, it's going to need to get into some more depth. It's going to need to provide more information about how the service works, the value it provides, how the end user can apply it, the value it generates. Whereas if you're just giving a brief on the market or a specific thing, then it can be 500 words. I'd say for SEO purposes, if you're going to be sharing it on your website or in a press release, then a minimum of 500 words.
Yeah,
it can be more.
Yeah, I would say 500 words pretty short for that, but attention spans are short too. So I hear you. I hear you. How has the PR world changed? I mean, that world has just been upended in so many ways over the past couple of decades. What's working and what's not working in PR nowadays?
I think direct marketing to journalists is a bit less effective now. And a lot of spam filters, they're not really looking to get pitched directly. Although if you already have relationships, it can work really well. Distributing press releases on newswires is very effective. Most journalists are tuned to that. And the way that the content is distributed is very targeted as well nowadays. So those strategies do work. We're finding that the message, that the title, the headlines you're using, the story that you're projecting needs to be very compelling. It needs to add value. It needs to really describe a situation in the marketplace or the relevance, the context of what you're offering. Otherwise, it won't get picked up. Anything that's promotional, especially, is not getting attention right now because everybody's trying to promote themselves. So the press release, it really needs to convey factual information about the market. Surveys are very good, statistical information. If you're going to announce a leadership change in your company, it really needs to be compelling and tell a story of the people involved, how it's going to affect the company, the way it's relevant to internal and external stakeholders.
Good. So wire services are out, though, it sounded like. I mean, of course, the big public companies need to use them, but is that not really worthwhile anymore to use the wire services?
No, I think they are. Actually, I think they're very effective.
Oh, okay. So I got that backwards.
Yeah, sure. Because it goes directly to the targeted journalist. And the wire services, depending on who you use, they already have relationships established. They filter it, they vet the information a little bit, they make sure that what is being distributed is of value, and often they'll advise you on that. A lot of the services you work with, if you submit something to them, they have their own editorial staff before they just put it onto the newswire. The distribution is very broad, so it goes out to thousands of publications that are targeted. The last press release we issued got very good uptake through a PR wire service, whereas the direct distribution we did for that campaign didn't really get a lot of attention.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
So it's expensive, but it can be very effective.
Right. Okay. Good stuff. How about with what's going on, with civil unrest, with the pandemic? Any changes in the way you're wording things or approaching things? I mean, of course, it's sort of easy to be insensitive and distasteful nowadays, and I've seen a lot of marketers doing stuff like that. So, any advice you have to listeners to just make the messages relevant to what's going on, but also to do it correctly and effectively?
Yes, I think being tasteful and tactful with anything you write or distribute is really important, regardless of pandemics. With the pandemic particularly, though, we do avoid bringing it up too much or placing emphasis on it unless that's the topic that we want to focus on or our message is directly related to that. But we try not to dwell on that. And for international audiences especially, we do avoid writing that incorporates too many like American cliches, colloquialisms, things that can be considered offensive. It really is important to avoid that. I think in business writing especially, it needs to be objective. It can be personal, it can tell a story, but it needs to be objective. It does need to be concise, professional, and really project a tone that reflects well on your brand.
Good stuff. Anything else you'd like to say just to wrap it up for us, Kirky? Any questions I didn't ask you or what you'd like the listeners to know?
Well, I'd like to say that the most important thing in marketing is to be consistent and to be authentic with what you're offering, what you're saying, the messages you're putting out there, really being clear, concise, and always generating value. That's the key thing. In anything that you do, you need to generate value. Otherwise, it's not necessary. It's not needed. It's not going to do anything for anyone, and nobody's going to listen or pay attention to it. So whether it's even a small social media post, even a pay-per-click ad, it needs to generate value. It needs to raise a question in the prospect's mind. It needs to provide value either for the internal or external stakeholders. It needs to provide value to investors or users. Yes, it needs to generate value, it needs to be credible, and it needs to convey your value proposition. That's the other thing. The value proposition is essential. You really have to express clearly what it is you're offering, who it's for, how it benefits them, and why you're the best choice. And also, I think today, sustainability is an important thing. That's something we incorporate into all of our content. Whenever there's an opportunity to focus on environmental and social consciousness, we find that that's the best thing to do to convey your concern and your interest in more than just profit motives, which are important, but social context, environmental context, regulatory context, those are all very important for generating content that's balanced, informative, and that really conveys your position in the industry, helps build it and build credibility.
And give out your website.
Sure, it's creativerealestatecopy.com.
Kirky Galt, thanks for joining us.
Likewise, thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.